Hi, Comm 130, it's Sister Peterson. So I'm going to go ahead and critique your work real quick. So here's the rules with critiquing. I'm just going to go through, first look, and give you a critique on what I'm noticing right off the bat. That does not guarantee I'm going to hit all the requirements. So you need to make sure that you do review the requirements, because when I grade, I go into a little bit more in depth, and double checking everything, and I have the rubric right there with me as I'm going through. So make sure you read over your rubric, just the requirements is the rubric, and that you have all the requirements on there. Spell check and punctuation is important. It's not something I'm checking in this critique. And then again, if I miss something small, you just need to check with your feedback on your classmates as well as your feedback from me. Also, if you would like me to look at this through email after you have completed your changes that you've made and it looks a little different and you're still unsure, because it's hard to tell until you actually make those changes on whether you're still hitting the principles or not, I'd be happy to look at it again. You just need to email it over to me, and don't put it on the discussion board. Email it to me at petersonju@byui.edu. Okay, I'm going to go in alphabetical order now. So make sure. Okay, just making sure you can hear me. I didn't know if the sound was on, but I'm going to go in alphabetical order according to first name. So wherever your first name falls in the alphabet, that's where you will be. So you can listen to this whole video if you want, or you could skip ahead to where you fall in the critique line. Keep in mind, though, I strongly encourage you listen to other critiques too as well. If you have the time, it's not required. And you definitely do not have to do it. I've just found when I was first learning how to design, what helped me tenfold was listening to other critiques and also critiquing myself, because then I started noticing principles that I may have not noticed before, I wasn't following before, and I can apply it then in just being faster at designing and more efficient. So fast and efficient and effective, all of those. So that's why I just strongly encourage you to listen to the whole critique if you have the time. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to start with you, Brittany. All right. Oops, I didn't mean to hit that. Dang it. Okay. All right, Brittany, let me look at this real quick. Okay. So your color scheme is great. First and foremost, I noticed the colors really go with the images that you pick too as well. It kind of creates that more subtle nature feel to it, and they're all just working really well together. Great job on that. Great job on your contrast with your typography, the size there, and the body copy below and being nice and small. I also like that you've separated some of your paragraphs. Make sure you go in and separate all of them though. So for example, you don't have space between opportunities in this paragraph here. So make sure all your paragraphs are separated in this too as well. And it looks like you did a hard return between each one. Let me show you an easier trick for that, so it's not such a hard return. It's not so much space, and then you won't have to go through and double check all the paragraphs. So I'd take your hard return out, so delete this extra space on each one, and then go to InDesign. Just click in your text box, and if you're on a PC, you hit the shortcut Control A. If you're on a Mac, Command A. Command A. That sounded weird how I said it. And anyways, and you kind of come up to this top toolbar up here, right up here. And then you're going to click on the paragraph formatting controls right here. And then click the space before. And right now I already have it clicked, but it'll be at 0. So if you just click it twice, it finds where all your enters are where the paragraph starts and ends. And even like if you have quotes, like you have a couple of quotes I noticed, like or sorry, quotations. In there, it'll also include that, which is great. And then you won't have to go through and make sure that you're spacing, that you're hitting every paragraph. So I'd recommend doing that. And then watch for widows. So a widow is a word on a line by itself. And you have one right there. And you have a couple in this text wrap. So um, I would adjust this text wrap because, or this image, because you never want your image to invade more than half of the column. So right here, you have it fine on this side, but this side, it's invading more than half of it. So I'd make it smaller so that you don't have the text stacked on top of each other and you don't have all these widows either. Okay. And the same here, it's kind of invading almost half right here, and you're stacking the letters, so give it space there. And then how to avoid widows. So you have two options for avoiding widows. Whoops. You could either adjust your column sizes here and play around with the columns and adjust it. I just opened up Photoshop. Golly. No. Okay. Or the other option is you could highlight a paragraph. What I typically do is I kind of play around with the text and change the text so it works, but where you're working with an article, you can't really change the text. So I highlight the text, I go to my character palette up top, the A, and then I adjust the leading here. So for example, I want to, we'll pretend there's a widow there, but where you see the V and the A and the double arrow there, I'm so tired. It's not the leading, it's the tracking. The tracking is the space between each letter there. But anyways, if you increase that, it bumps some words down, or if you decrease it, it subtracts some words there. So you could do one or the other. But make sure that you never go above 2 clicks up or 2 clicks down. So it should never be above 20 or below -20. Otherwise, it's so obvious that that's what you're doing. And this way it's more subtle and people don't pick up on that. Okay, so that can get rid of the widows for you. Um, and then the other thing is making sure you don't stretch your text out of proportion. This is kind of looking out of proportion in comparison to this. So never drag or squish a text box out of proportion. Always just either resize the the text in the box, or if you're resizing using the move tool, grab from the corners there. Watch out for orphans. Orphan is the paragraph, a paragraph that is a line of a paragraph by itself. So right here, see how this whole line is by itself and then the rest of it wraps over? You need to have either this go over there or have one more line underneath it so it's not an orphan, okay? I love this image though. I love what image you chose here, and I love how small your copy is. What I'd recommend doing though for this image is it's so hard to read the text on it because it's a darker image, and I would just lower the opacity on the image a little bit more. So if you click on the image itself and then come up here to the checkered box icon, and right next to it, it says 100%. That's your opacity, and you can lower that. And if you lower it, it'll be a lot easier to read the text. So I'd recommend lowering it to in the 20s, so it's a lot easier to see the text that's on top of it. Okay. This image looks pixelated though. Make sure your image is linked, that the link is still there. If the link is broken, relink it. But right now it's looking a little blurry. So check that, or it could be the quality of the image too. Make sure it's high enough quality. Oh, and on your text wraps, it's looking like the text is almost touching. the image there, that's creating tension. So make sure right there and right here where it's touching pretty much that you give it enough space. So if you click on your image and you go Window, Text Wrap, and pull up your text wrap box, which is right here, you have that image highlighted. Right here where it says top offset, it's a box pointing up. Click up a couple of times. So right now, let me go back to 0. So right now it's touching. You want to give it some space. So if you just click up, you'll start to see the space increase. Okay. So you want to just make sure that you give it plenty of space. Okay. So that it's not touching. Right? And then I would lower the opacity on the gradient too. So if you click, I have a gradient on here, but the key to gradients so that they're not cheesy is to make them softer and more subtle. So let me show you. Let me make sure my layer is not linked. Hold on. Yeah, it is locked. Okay. So here's my gradient. Oops, not that one. That's my image. Here's my gradient right here. So that it's not so obvious, I came up here to the opacity and I lowered the opacity because this is at 100% and it is really obvious that it's a gradient and I don't like it. I like it more subtle. So I just clicked on my gradient, my box, and I came up here to the opacity, the checkerboard, and I lowered it to about 50%. And that way it's more of a subtle gradient and then just a nice accent to it, okay? See how nice that looks? You can barely even notice it's there. So that's what I recommend doing because this is a little bit obvious of the gradient. So I just click on it and lower the opacity on it, okay? But other than that, I think everything else looks pretty good. No, that's nice repetition. Okay, yeah, let me know if you have any questions on your feedback and if you want me to look at it again, okay? Thanks, Brittany. Okay, Katrina. Oh my gosh, somebody else did this article in the other. I have 2 sections, and in my other section, somebody else did this article, and they also went out and took pictures of lemons, so that's so fun. All right, well, I like your color scheme, and I like that it really goes with your images too as well. Um, the yellow with the gray and the cooler tones looks really nice. Mm, Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so tired. I like your image here that it's bold and it's grabbing my attention. Right, and I love the contrast in your typography with size and the category. I would maybe remove this line here, or I would move it down a little bit, but where by lane canon is falling right on the line, it's creating that tension. Um, and so I give it some more space, or I just remove that line altogether there. Okay. And I would maybe give you your text boxes a little bit more space between them. See how this is nice? It separates it and it gives your text a nice outlet. I would give it about that much space. It's almost running into the next paragraph, so I want to read straight across. So just give it a little bit more space so it doesn't feel like that, okay? Um, I love that you separated each of your paragraphs with space between them so it's easy to navigate and it has a nice flow. Watch out for an orphan. So the orphan is the beginning or the end of a paragraph when the line is by itself. So right here, do you see how the whole line's by itself? I would just move this so it's down here and it's not an orphan, a whole line by itself. So move it down to the second page where it's grouped in with this paragraph, okay? And then watch for widows. Widows are a word on a line by itself. So it's just one word by itself. And how you avoid widows is you could either adjust the column width and size there. And maybe when you adjust these columns so that there's a little bit more space, it'll get rid of that widow. But double check and make sure that it didn't then create other widows as well. So you could either adjust the column size, or sometimes you need to just go into the paragraph itself, highlight it, and play around with the tracking. And the tracking is the space between each one of the letters. So if I click on the A option right up here, well, it should by default be up there. So I'm in my character formatting palette. Right here where it says VA and it has a double arrow behind it, that's the tracking. So if I click up twice, it increases the space between each of the letters. If I click down, it will decrease it, okay? Now you never want to go click up more than twice, and you never want to click down more than twice. Otherwise, it's too obvious that that's what you're doing. Otherwise, if you just click up or down twice, it's more subtle and people won't notice. So again, never above 20 right here and never below -20, okay? So hopefully that helps you get rid of that widow. And then the text in this shape, though it's a fun shape, it's a little too close to the edge in some spots. Do you see where it's almost touching? So I just make this text just a little bit smaller so it's not too close to the edge and creating that tension. I like that you have repetition and repeating elements on each page. I would then, do you see how you have the dots here and they're not right up against the edge? I would move that up. It's again a tangent. So that seems to be a common thing, a tangent. Just watch and make sure that your text has plenty of space around it. And then make sure that your image isn't interrupting the middle of a paragraph. So do you see here this, how it says upon your shoulders that, and I have to move around the image to get to the next part of the sentence. And it's in the middle of the paragraph. So that just interrupts the flow of the image. So I would move this image and I would put it in between these two paragraphs, but not in the middle of the paragraph and in the middle of a sentence, okay? All right, so that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions on your feedback, but you're off to a really great start. Thank you, Katrina. All right, Derek. Okay, Derek. So I really like your color scheme. I feel like it fits with the images that you pick. Um, and it's nice and subtle too. It's not taking away from anything, but just enhancing. I love the contrast in your typography and that you added different sizes to even the title to make things just pop a little bit more and more interesting. So great job there. I like your alignment. Looks really nice. And your text is consistent in the spacing and the subtitles. They all look great. And that I love that you have extra space between each paragraph, and so it's easy to navigate through. That's great. The main thing I'm noticing right now is widows. So a widow and orphans, sorry, both widows and orphans. So let me explain the difference. A widow is a word on a line by itself. So like shoulder right here, that's a widow. I saw another one. Oh, happiness right here. That is a widow. So, and added here. So blessings. So to avoid widows, what you can do, there's two things you could do. You could either play around with your column sizes, increase or decrease the width, see if that helps, or you could highlight a paragraph that the widow is in and play around with the tracking. And the tracking is the space between each one of the letters, so you could increase it or decrease it. And how you do that is if you look up top and you have your character palette selected, not the paragraph one, but the character formatting controls, that's selected. Look for the VA and then the double arrow below it. And then if you click up or down on the up and down arrows, that you can see either increases or decreases the space between each letter. So you either want to go up or down, and you never want to go more than 2 clicks in either direction. So it should never be above 20, that number in there, or below -20. So that should help with, whoops, with the widows. The other thing is your orphans. So orphan is the end or the beginning of a paragraph. It's essentially where it wraps the paragraph and it's a line by itself, like a whole line of the paragraph. So this is a widow, I'm sorry, an orphan. And so what you want to do is make sure that you either have another line that wraps over with it, or this is joined with the other paragraph. And the same with this. This would be an orphan. So this would need to either join with this paragraph or another line from that paragraph needs to go over to the next line, okay? So it's just mainly some typography rules that need to be cleaned up. Your text wrap looks great. Oh, hyphens. You have some hyphens in here, mostly on this column right here. So how do you get rid of hyphens? If you highlight everything, so if you just click in your text box and hit Command A on a Mac, Control A on a PC, and come over here to the paragraph option, so it's paragraph formatting or paragraph formatting controls right there. You'll see hyphenate, and you should have a check box there. That means that you are allowing hyphens on there. So you want to uncheck it so that there's no checkbox, and that will remove any hyphens, okay? All right, but other than that, you have some great consistency. The color, I like the borders around the image and the quote. Everything looks like it goes together, and so there's some really great unity that you've done here, okay? Thanks, Derek. All right, Joseph. Ooh, it's fun that you have the image behind your text there. I like that. Okay. All right, Joseph. So you've got some great images that go really well together. Um, and go with the top image too. I like that it kind of has a naturey, grassy look to it. Make sure though that your images are helping with the flow, not interrupting. So do you see how she's kind of facing out of the frame? So she's leading me not only out of the frame, down out of the frame. So your image placement right there is struggling a little bit because she's facing down and she's going in. The best place to put her would be up in this right-hand corner. So my eyes will be led to the text and not completely out of the frame there. Um, and this is a lot better. Do you see how she's kind of looking up towards the text? That's better flow. So this image just needs to be placed into a different spot where it's helping with the flow. Keep your spacing consistent. So I love how you group Revelation for the church and ourselves together. Like these are in proximity to each other. And then you have extra space between the quote. And then right here, I would have that same spacing. So this space that you have between for the church, for ourselves, and then the quote right below it, have that same space between that quote and then President Russell M. Nelson, okay? Keep your spacing consistent. And then there's some random weird hard returns here. Do you see how, like in the middle of the sentence, it's a hard return, and there's some weird, like by is completely by itself when it should be together. So I go in there and see what's going on, why you have some weird extra returns in the middle, interrupting the flow of your text. Yeah, go through and look at that and get rid of those enters because it's not formatted correctly. Watch for widows. So a widow is a word on a line by itself. Now you have lots of widows here, but I think it's because it's randomly hard return between each one. Okay, so go in there and remove all your widows. So this one right here, And you may just need to decrease the size or increase the size of your text box so it all fits together in the 3 lines. Yeah, it's on the piece throughout the whole thing. So check that out, Joseph. I'm not sure what's going on here. And then I love how you have some space between the end of this paragraph and the subtitle, but here it's kind of all crammed together and there's weird proximity. So keep your spacing consistent on all of it, okay? I like that your color, like the image here, I mean the background color here is matching kind of her shirt, but make sure your text isn't right up against the edge here. Give it plenty of space. So if you look at my example here, do you see, let me not click on my text box, but do you see how there's plenty of space around it? You want to make sure that it's not up against the edge because that's creating tension. We call that a tangent. And when you're working with a dark value like this color, make your text white on top of it. It looks cleaner. Okay. Um, and I would move this box just over a little bit more. Do you see how it's kind of invading over almost over half of this column, but not half of this? So move it over just a little bit so that it's balanced and center aligned. And then you're going to need to go in here once you've cleaned up these weird hard returns between each in these weird random spots. You're going to need to have your paragraphs broken up. So do you see how I have a space after each one of my paragraphs? You'll need to do that. So what I recommend doing is taking out all those weird hard returns and then clicking just in the text box and then Command A or Control A on a PC. Come up to your paragraph formatting controls right here and just go to this icon where it's pointing to the space before right here. And then just click, I'll show you at 0. Just click up twice, 1, 2, and it separates each paragraph nicely so that you have a space between each one, okay? All right, and then I would find a way to add this color throughout the piece again. Could you have the subtitles all be that color to add a little bit more unity and repetition? That would be my advice, okay? All right, but let me know if you have any questions on your feedback or if you want me to take a look at it again after you've made adjustments. Thanks, Joseph. All right, Julia. Okay, Julia, you have a lot of fun things going on here. Some things that I haven't ever seen in a magazine spread, so it's fun. I like your color scheme and that it's incorporated throughout the whole piece. It definitely looks great. I almost think that your title, because it's kind of right on top of the image itself, and it's almost competing with the background for focal point, and they're both very strong. So I would take this title. I like how you have it. Just move it kind of up above here. So it's almost like she's looking up towards it or reaching up towards it in this area, and so that it's not directly on top of her. And then the text is getting really hard to read on top of her pants. There's just not enough contrast there. So you might need to just lower the opacity of this image, or you can take like a box, a rectangle, and make a rectangle with the road color. So for example, let me show you just on mine. I'll just make a oops. I don't want Photoshop right now. Okay. So just make a rectangle And let's make this a solid color real quick so you can see more solid. I would make it the road color, and you can just eyedrop the road color. I'll show you how to eyedrop real quick. So I'm gonna have that on top. But click on your eyedrop and just eyedrop a color and the road color specifically and fill that. And then have that behind your image. So go ahead and right click and then go arrange, send backwards and keep sending it backwards until it's on top of your image but underneath your text, okay? And then come over here to the checkered bar icon and lower your opacity, and that way it the pants won't interfere with the contrast between the text and the pant color, and then you can read it still. So that's how you would make like a transparent box behind this, so it's still easy to read, okay? But I love your typography. I love the color and the contrast that you did with it. It looks really great. um I love too that you've broken up each paragraph, that it's easy to read. Do that for the top too as well. You don't have your paragraphs up here broken up like you do here where you have the space after, okay? In my week 6 at the bottom where I have tips, tricks, and discussions, I give you a tutorial on how to avoid this awkward spacing when you justify the text. So go take a look at that, okay? And then also remove hyphens. So you have hyphens on here. You can remove hyphens by just clicking in your text box, Command A or Control A on a PC to select everything, and then go ahead and you'll have the hyphenate button checked, and you're under your paragraph formatting controls, but you'll have the not on the character, but on the paragraph formatting. But anyways, you'll have hyphenate selected. Go ahead and uncheck it, and that'll remove your hyphens, okay? I love this. I absolutely love this, how you did the quote boxes there and the text wrap around there. Yeah, and sometimes it just looks like in here too, the paragraphs aren't separated. So go in there and separate each of the paragraphs like you do up here, okay? So that they're not running together. This image looks great. This image, so yeah, everything else looks really nice. This is really clean and really nicely done. So great job, Julia. Please let me know if you have any questions. All right. Lucine? Oh, that's fun. Typography or text or decorative text. You know what I would do? Um, because this text is it almost has strings from it, I would give it somewhere to hang from. So I'd bring it to the top of this image right here and have these strings hang from the top of the image, because right now it's there's strings, and so they're supposed to be hanging from something, and they're not really hanging in from anything. So I'd bring it to the top of this image and just have it hang there. And you could even add like a white stroke around the image so you can see that. So if you just click, I have it on this image, but if you just click on the image, right here is where you can add a white stroke. I have a pink stroke, but you can add a white stroke there. And that way the white stroke will flow into this string right here, but that'll be fun. Okay. And then there's the author. So you wrote this. That's pretty fun. Let me look at it all. Hold on. Okay. All right. So, first things first, let's talk I love the contrast with that you have with the typography. I like that your color scheme looks great. Um, I I love that there's great alignment throughout the piece and you have a lot of repetition and unity. So it does look like it all goes together. There's a couple of things that I would suggest adjusting. So sometimes you have extra space between each paragraph and sometimes you don't. So what I would recommend doing, you either need an extra space after each paragraph, like I have here on mine. Do you see how there's extra space between each paragraph? Or you need to have an indent. I like extra space personally the best because I feel like it's cleaner. It doesn't, and it breaks up the text a little bit better. So what I do is I go into my text, and if you hit Control A or Command A, um, Control A on a PC, Command A on a Mac, it'll highlight all the text, and then you're going to make sure you want to select the paragraph icon right here, which pulls up the paragraph formatting controls. And then I'll show you right here where it has an arrow pointing to space. That's space before. So if you click the up arrow twice, that gives you extra space between each hard return, okay? And that'll easily separate each paragraph for you. Watch for widows. So a widow is a word on a line by itself. You have one right there. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's the only widow you have. So you either needed just oh, and one right here. So you either need to just adjust your column sizes, or you can, since this is an article you wrote yourself, you could go in there and maybe add a little extra words, or play around with the text itself um, to see if you can get rid of those widows. Um, and then watch for hyphens. So you have a couple of hyphens right here. What you want to do is, again, select everything. So Control A or Command A, Control A on a PC and Command A on a Mac. And then again, we're still working in the paragraph formatting controls, so the paragraph icon there. And then you will have hyphenate box checked right here. So what you want to do is uncheck that. You want to make sure there's no check in there, and that'll remove the hyphens, okay? Um, and same with here. And then this text is a little too close to the edge of the box here. Give it plenty of space. So where it's right up against it, it's creating that tension. So I just make the text smaller inside this box so it's not right up against the edge. Okay. And then there is a little bit, there's a little bit of like almost like awkward placement here with this quote box and her standing right there. What I would recommend doing um, is maybe just breaking up the column a little bit more. So you could have the quote, and then you could have the first part of the column here and bring her over here. So she's sitting right here in this area. So move her directly over, and then have the last part of the column here. So it's kind of breaking up and doesn't have that weird, like awkward spacing and almost trapped white space in right here and here inside of her. Okay. Um, And then I would just make this solid white underneath here, like you have here, because it's easier. It's less busy that way. So make this solid white like you have here, and then this just being the border. Okay. And um, there's this weird extra box under here. Is that part of the image, or is there a random box there? Look into that and see what's going on there. If you need help getting rid of that, just let me know. Okay. And so there's a couple of things that I would suggest doing. Um, if you have any questions or want to go over any of my, or even just send it over after you've made those adjustments, um, go ahead and just email me, okay? I'd like to hello, sister. Okay, yeah, I can definitely give you feedback on your work. That's what I'm here for. This is a beautiful image. Okay, great. I love the color scheme and the fun that you're having with this, the shapes and the just the creativity that you approach the alignment. I love that this color is kind of matching the color that she has in her dress here. Um, the text is getting a little hard to read in some spots because her dress is a little bit busy. Um, and there's spots in it that are white. So what I would recommend doing is just probably lowering the opacity on the image or even putting like a box underneath it so that it's easier to read. You can keep this image here, but maybe even just putting like a solid box behind it or even a transparent box behind it so that some of the text isn't getting lost and hard to read on top of her dress. You do have some trapped white space right here. So I love the alignment that you have with the title, but do you see how this white space is trapped in here because of their heads and then the text? So what I would recommend doing is maybe putting President Henry B. Eyring um, below it just a little bit, maybe even right here. I don't know. Or bringing even the title down a little bit so remember falls right here and then everything else could maybe line up a little bit easier and then there's not this awkward trap white space. That could be an option. Or even bringing him up, so always remember him and having it straight across. But you'll have to play around to get rid of this trapped white space. And then do you see it, the spacing here? Keep that spacing consistent here. It feels like this is a little bit further away than always remember. So group them together just a little bit better. I would even keep the spacing that you have here between President Henry B. Eyring and him the same up here. So bring it closer together, less space between them, okay? Okay, I like that you broke up the paragraphs with a space between each of them. It looks great. Um, there's a little bit too much space between here. Just move it up just a little bit. I love your subtitles. I can't think anymore. It's so late. But I love your subtitles and the consistency there. Your typography has great consistency. This is invading the column just a little bit too much, or you could even take away a little bit of the padding. But do you see how it's taking up over half of the column here? I would make it smaller so it's not so stacked on top of each other, just a little bit smaller. Okay. And watch for a widow. A widow is a word on a line by itself. So you could either adjust your size of your text, make it a little smaller to get rid of that widow. You could adjust the column sizes. You could kind of play around with the text placement. You can even increase or decrease the tracking between each letter to kind of get rid of that widow. So just that widow, a word on a line. And here a widow in the text wrap, here a widow to again. So play around with that. See if you can get rid of those widows. Other than that, I really do like it. It looks very consistent, like I said. So great job. Okay, last one. Tavia. Okay. Okay, Tavia, I'll take a look at this and look at your colors and let you know. So Tavia, I love that you're doing complementary colors though, because you have this nice blue here. And then what I would do is maybe add just a smidge more pink to this orange so it's more salmony. That will look really good with this blue. I think you'll like those colors a lot better. Maybe that's why you're struggling with it. So if you actually look, mine I have kind of more of a pink salmony look to it, but it looks really good with teal and light blue. So try maybe going more that color, or just even just a little bit more red into this so that it comes off salmon like. Okay, that will look really nice. I know that was a concern in your colors. And then take that color and put it in your title too and your subtitles, and that will create some nice unity on each one of the pages. Okay, and that will help out the design. And then, you know what? You have this border around your text your quote here. Put the same border around here. So I did that kind of on mine too, and you can see how it unifies it, bringing that border. It brings this image and ties this image into the whole piece itself, um, by just adding that little border around it. And then I added a drop shadow too, so it looks like it was on top of the image, on the flowers itself, the background, so it's separated. You don't really have a background, so you don't have to necessarily stress about that, but it would be fun to have you already have a stroke around it, but it's a black stroke, but having that more pinky, tealy, peachy color to it, okay? Your text, do you see how it's invading more than a third of your column, or more than a half of your column? I would just make this a little bit smaller so it's not stacking your words on top of each other so much. So just so it comes to about right here on the side and right here on the side. So just make that whole circle a little bit smaller, okay? Um, I don't know why, but when you copy and paste text from LDS.org, sometimes you bring the numbers over. So just kind of go through there. What I found, because it didn't on mine, is I found the highest number, which is 13 for you, and I just delete it and count down 12, 11, 10. So just go through and delete those numbers. Okay, but I love your subtitles and how they're consistent and they have the contrasting font with it. Um, is it the same font as this? I would have it, I think you have 3 different fonts and they're all sans serif font. I would do, instead of this font with the old style font, I would either change this font to be a sans serif font, or I'd change this to be a sans serif font, and then I would make your subtitles match that font, okay? But I love what you did here, the order and the alignment here with the text. Um, I don't know why you don't like this. I think it's turned out really nice. You do have some weird returns right here though, like direction from Lord, the Lord said, or unless that's a quote. Oh, never mind. I would lower the opacity of this image just a little bit more. So just go in there just a little bit more, click on the image, click on the checkered board icon and lower it just to about probably 20, in your 20s to 30s, okay? And have it in that range so it's a little bit more subtle. All right, and then you need to break up your paragraphs. So do you see how there is a paragraph that ends here and a new paragraph that starts? You just need to break it up so it's easier for your audience to understand when the next paragraph is and have more order to, and just the text broken up a little bit more. So if you click on your text box, and if you're on a PC, go ahead and hit Control A. If you're on a Mac, Command A. And what that does, let me click in my text box, sorry. Oops. Let me grab my text tool. And then Control A or Command A. If you're on a PC, Control A. Mac, Command A. And that selects all the text. And then come over here to your paragraph formatting. So you're going to click on the paragraph icon. And then, hold on, I'm gonna put this at 0, but do you see how I have these paragraphs, but it's hard to tell where the paragraph starts and ends? So look for this icon where it's pointing an arrow directly at the space before, and just click the up arrow twice, and that's breaks up the paragraphs a little bit better. So you have space between each one. Okay, looks nice. It's a lot easier to read. So go in there and do that on them. And then I'm struggling with the placement of this. Um, I think it would be better if instead of you putting it right here, what if you just put it down in the middle here, have this column go over onto this side, and have both columns kind of wrap around it. I think I did this actually in my example because I was having a hard time knowing where to wrap my image. Yeah, right here. So do you see how it's at the bottom and then I have the text wrapping around both sides? I would have it, I would do that with this quote box so that it's flowing around either side. It's just kind of has rough placement here. Or even above, you can put it right in the middle up here and have it wrapping on either side. Either one of those spots could be fun. Okay. And then make sure your text isn't too close to the edge here or here. I'd just make it a little bit smaller so it's not too close to the edge of the boxes there. But I don't know why you're struggling with the design. I think it's great. I think the one thing that's kind of hard is just the repetition. So bring that color, play around with that color, and bring that color throughout the whole piece. Add a border on there, just hopefully those give you some ideas and help you out. Watch for widows, though. Make sure you go in there and you get rid of your widows, a word on a line by itself. You may need to just adjust your columns or the actual text itself. So what I do, because you can't really change the article, you copy and paste that. But what I like to do is just highlight that paragraph that the widow is in. And I go again to my paragraph formatting. No, I'm sorry, I go to my character. So look for the A icon. And then I look for VA with a double arrow behind it. This increases or decreases the tracking, which is the spacing between each one of the letters. And so if you hit the up arrow, see how it creates more space between the letters? And then it also brings some extra text down. You could do that, or you could hit the down arrow and decrease the spacing just until you get rid of that widow. Now keep in mind, you never want to go above 2 clicks, either up or down. So it should never be above 20 or below -20, okay? But that could help get rid of the widows, okay? Let me know if you have any questions or if you want me to look at it again. But you're off to a great start, Tavia, so don't stress. All right, thanks everybody. So again, email me if you have any questions or concerns on feedback. And wonderful job. I'm really impressed with how far you've already gotten. So this will be a great week to just fine tune things. And yeah, best wishes for this week.